Greetings and welcome to episode 2 of the James Cast. Today we're going to start off with a little bit of a gripe about the weather. It's coming down hard and it's wet on a Friday morning, but that's not going to stop me because I'm feeling good, and the reason for that is because I've just been pumping on AC/DC live at Donington, Hell's Bells, which got me all amped up on a Friday morning despite the rainfall. So this week I'm fresh off a trip to France, the south of France, doing some surfing, and I got some UV rays penetrating my little soft white skin, and it burned my little nose a little bit, but so be it. It's what's gonna either lead to my end or toughen me up and give me a lovely tan. So at the minute I don't really have a great tan. I just have a little kiss of sunshine, which is enough. So this week's been a good week. Good to get away. I enjoyed the shenanigans in France. My French is quite weak, but I managed to lamely hobble my way through most conversations, the majority of which just involved dealing with a menu and saying a few words in French but not forming an actual grammatically correct sentence, but throwing in a few English words and just kind of pretty pathetic in general. But I just think it's a little bit more respectful to make a pathetic effort than to just give up and speak English and expect the French to just cave to the tourism, which they don't seem to enjoy. But most of the people there, I thought, had excellent English, and in general enjoyed it. So let me think if there's anything. One interesting thing that happened to me was I was reading my book one night, reading the iPad, and which I normally do to clear my brains and send me into sleep. I was reading a thing, I was getting tired, but the book I was reading was about the Lance Armstrong performance-enhancing drugs era and how he won the Tour de France 7 times, and how he actually took all the PEDs, which was phenomenal. He was such a sociopath, and the way that they were doing it was in one of the earlier Tour de France's, when it was still kind of they were figuring out how to do it, all the team doctors administered all the PEDs, which included intravenous EPOs, which increased the red blood cell count and allowed them to have huge increases in endurance, like up to 80% increases in endurance, which pretty much meant that anybody riding clean didn't stand a chance. Like, the only way you were competing was if you were on the juice. So there was that, testosterone and different types of steroids and stuff. But at one stage they had hired this kind of local French guy who was a friend of Lance's, and he had a motorbike, and for the 3 weeks of the Tour de France he would just chase them down and show up at the team hotels with a cooler, like a picnic cooler, and in the cooler would be all the drugs, and the guys would just shoot up, and during the Tour de France giving them a huge advantage, and that was before the test got sophisticated enough to really register any EPO. They had no idea how to test for that shit. But so he did this for a couple of years, and everybody was cheating anyway. So all the cyclists knew, all the teams knew, all the managers knew, everybody knew. But the UCI, which was the testing agency, had no idea how to test for EPO, which was the big culprit at the time. So slowly but surely, let me stay where I'm staying. So the guy would show up, he'd drop off his cooler of shit, and then in the team RV where the lads would be go immediately after a race to change their clothes and wash up. The cooler would be in there, and they'd have syringes waiting for them in their sneaks, and then they'd shoot up subcutaneously, so it would have to go right into the stomach or just below the thin skin of the forearm and into the fat, and then the empty syringes would all be placed in a singular Coke can. The Coke can would then be crushed and placed at the bottom of a backpack, and then one of the guys on the team who was kind of inconspicuous would just pop on his shades and walk out of the RV, and he'd get rid of the Coke can in the bin somewhere, and that was how they were doing it. That's how Lance Armstrong won the first couple of Tour de France's. Then he started working with really shady doctors who were experts in performance-enhancing drugs, and the whole goal was to get extremely low body fat, cut your weight down to the absolute minimum, make sure that your upper body was as skinny as possible. When you're off the bike and not training, don't do any walking, don't climb any stairs. A lot of cyclists, as soon as they get off the bike to train, would literally have people that would carry them into their homes or carry them to a hotel room, or like literally do not use your legs for anything other than pedaling your bike, which I thought was crazy. And they all experienced like ridiculous mobility issues and uncomfortable lives, really, because of how extreme they were treating their bodies. But moving on to the later eras, when they began blood transfusions, and that's when shit really got crazy, because what they were doing was they would extract a pint of blood, and then during the race they would reintroduce the pint of blood to the body, and they would get a big surge in red blood cells, which helped carry oxygen, which was an even more effective means of increasing endurance, especially at critical points in the 3-week Tour de France where guys were just completely exhausted, and the hematocrit levels, which were an indicator of how much hemoglobin is in your blood and how much red blood cells your blood has, and therefore how much oxygen you can carry. So this would get a boost, and so guys were really getting into the transfusion business. And what you could do is you could store a fresh pint of blood for about 5 weeks before blood cells started to die. And there was one occasion where a younger rider, I don't think it was in the Tour de France, it was just an anecdotal sample of this young fella actually used a pint of dog's blood and became extremely sick and almost died and was never the same again performance-wise, but I don't know any more details than that. It was just kind of a quick reference in the book, which was written by Tyler Hamilton, who was Lance Armstrong's second in command for a few years, and then one of his main competitors in the years following their split. But it was interesting getting into the psyche of Tour de France cyclist, and the type of drive that was there, and also the moral, the difficulties in making that decision, because most of those guys make the decision to begin doping very early in their careers, pretty much just after the transition to the professional ranks, because there's just no way to compete, and it's kind of the option that's on the table is either play ball and do your doping like everybody else, and you've got the opportunity to compete on the world-class stage because that's what everyone's doing, or stay on your moral high horse and go home and quit the cycling business because you're not going to be able to do anything. And I think I remember hearing there was some guy in a couple of years ago, and maybe Lance Armstrong's last Tour de France win, that the first guy who tested clean was something like 35th in the pack, so the first 35 guys were all on the juice. And, who's to say how those guys would have performed if they were clean, or pani agua is the term that they use in the business, which means bread and water. So, pretty interesting. So that's the latest scoop that I have from this week. Lance Armstrong and his sociopathic reign over the professional cycling business. And there was a huge inquiry, federal inquiry, into Armstrong's alleged doping regime, and the feds invested almost 18 months, or maybe even more, maybe it was 22 months, of investigations, subpoenaed several professional cyclists, and also included other cycling staff members such as doctors, massage therapists, mechanics, all sorts of people that would have had a unique insight into that world. And all of those people gave testimony and, discussed conversations that they'd overheard, and they were all under oath as well. So they were building this huge case. And 22 months in, Tyler Hamilton at this point had come completely clean about everything. He released everything, all the facts. Armstrong vehemently denied everything up to this point. And he went after people as well. He sued people for slander and for libel and for he really tried to crush anybody who was saying this shit. And he was also arrogantly, I don't even know what the word is. He's just so arrogant in his opposition. He was laughing at people for accusing him for what he actually did. And so after he tried to crush all these people, out of nowhere, the feds just dropped the case, dropped all investigations after this 22-month-long inquiry, and that was the end of it. And there was no explanation as to why. The information about closing the case was released on the same day as the Super Bowl at 5 p.m. or something, and the word was potential conspiracy theories include the fact that it came from up high in Washington, and they say that the potential reasons were that Obama did not want, or maybe not Obama, but his political advisors did not want a high-profile athlete like Lance Armstrong, an American, going through such a big, tumultuous, scandalous procedure and tarnishing the name of American sports while it was an election year, which I think may have been 2012 or something, I don't know. No, 2010 I guess it was. But yeah, so that was dropped. And then since then, USADA, I think it was USADA, opened up a separate case, and they're not federal, so a court of law does not apply, and they will accuse somebody based on reasonable amount of evidence, enough to make a decision by the panel. So all the fancy lawyers that Armstrong had, and he had a serious team of legal eagles, and they were all useless in this situation because USADA have a board of directors, and they make their decision, and that's it. So he got burned eventually, and they stripped him of his titles, and they also banned him from competing in triathlons, which was great. What a dirtbag. But I guess it's too late. He's already made his millions. He's a bastard, really. But I mean, if he was a nice guy, I'd have a lot more sympathy, because he was competing with everybody else was using, and he was using, but he was just such a sociopathic bastard who tried to crush everybody. But anyway, that is a quick rundown of performance-enhancing drugs in the cycling business. I think it's been cleaned up since, but I guess we won't know, because people are always ahead of the curve, and science is always advancing, as is the science of human performance, which would be under the branch of science. So that's a redundant statement, but nonetheless, I hope that you embrace this day with a sense of meaning and purpose, And I hope that it provides you with the opportunities that you need to excel in your own character and in the role of a human in today's fast-paced and incredibly exciting world that we live in. Until next time, be good and stay safe.